This is Passengers United.
So if you got a chance to watch our previous video on the rally outside Sunnyside Community Service, as you can see here, you would have gotten a chance to listen to some of the stories and pleas of many of these seniors and many others who rely on the bus stop right outside of it. Now, we have more information about the stop itself, and this is what this video is about. So, first of all, I just want to start off by saying that this bus stop is absolutely vital. It is a lifeline for so many people, including those who rely on congregate services and congregate programs at Sunnyside Community Services. Now, in addition to all the pleas by many seniors and many others who rely on this stop, another reason why this stop is so vital and must be preserved is that the Essential Origins and Destinations accessibility rating is 5 out of 5, and the Pathway Conditions accessibility rating is 4.1 out of 5. Now, what does this mean? You're looking at these numbers, I presume, and you're wondering, what is this all about? Why is this so significant? Well, this all comes from the Bus Stop Accessibility Index, and this is a framework that I've been developing along with the team at Passengers United, as well as many other leading transportation practitioners, professors at the University of Pennsylvania, others in transportation, disability advocacy, etc. And this is essentially a framework that is used to quantify many of the various factors that affect people's abilities to get to and from the bus stops, get on buses, actually make it onto buses and allow them to use buses in the first place. So the Bus Stop Accessibility Index measures what are known in the disability advocacy field as pathways. And as I mentioned, those include the distance between your origin or destination and the bus stop. That's what's known as the first and last mile connection. The ability to wait at the bus stop with ease, including whether you can sit down while you're waiting for the bus, whether you can be protected from the elements by a bus shelter, as well as your ability to board and get off the bus from the bus stop. Those are all known as pathways. And in addition to pathways, the Bus Stop Accessibility Index measures the bus stop's proximity to essential origins and destinations, including subsidized and supportive housing and essential services and transit connections. And the Senior Center, Sunnyside Community Services, this community center is a major essential service as it provides congregate programs that seniors, people with disabilities, and many others who rely on these programs need. And the stop's proximity to Sunnyside Community Services, the fact that it's right outside Sunnyside Community Services, really makes all the difference. So what this Bus Stop Accessibility Index does is it takes all of these factors. We have trained data collectors who are going out to the bus stops, conducting these observations, these site evaluations, and entering the data based on all these criteria. And I'm going to show you exactly what goes into this in just a moment, but ultimately the data come together, and ultimately the calculations are conducted automatically, and two different ratings are generated, the ones that you saw previously. The Essential Origins and Destinations accessibility rating, which is primarily based on the stop's proximity to essential origins and destinations, and the stop's vitality based on that, as well as pathway conditions, which assess each of those different pathways shown previously. And factors that contribute to the pathway conditions rating include the width of the sidewalk, the condition of the sidewalk, whether the stop has a shelter with seating, whether the bus can pull up to the curb and deploy the wheelchair ramp, and someone who uses a mobility device can get on without their path being obstructed or off without their path being obstructed, whether there are any immediate obstructions or safety hazards that could potentially put someone at risk. All of these factors come into play, and they generate the pathway conditions accessibility rating. And both of these ratings are vital to understand the overall accessibility of the bus stop, as well as ultimately each of the factors that come into play, and the results are both interpretable and actionable. So I'm going to show you exactly what goes into this now. So here's StopScan, and StopScan is our in-house web application that I actually put together to ease the data collection and entry process. And what StopScan allows trained data collectors to do is actually go into the system and answer each of the questions relating to the bus stop accessibility index right from where they are, from a computer, a mobile device, whatever it may be. And if you're ever interested in joining this data collection project, we need more people. We are scanning bus stops both in Queens, and we will be doing the same in Brooklyn. Please go to the link that's on the screen right now. The link is also in the description of this video. We need more data collectors. We need all the help that we can possibly get, because ultimately these conditions, all of these different factors, directly affect riders' abilities, your ability to get to the bus stop and on the bus, and ultimately it impacts your ability to use buses in the first place. And if you can't complete any of those pathways, or you're having difficulty getting to a bus stop or on a bus, or there are safety hazards that could put you at risk, those are all barriers to access. And this all comes into play with the bus network redesigns, when the MTA is removing bus stops, and they've been removing bus stops without justifying why they were removing each bus stop or how that impacts the accessibility of the network and riders' abilities to actually get to and from their bus stops. And that's actually the reason why we're doing this analysis in the first place, is because the MTA never justified it. It's very clear from our previous analysis using an older version of this framework, that there's no correlation between the stops that the MTA removed and the stops that the MTA kept and their overall accessibility. So that's why we're in this to begin with. And this framework is vital to ensuring that when decisions are being made that directly affect people's mobility and people's ability to access bus stops, access buses, access essential services, get where they need to go, get where they want to go, ultimately it just becomes more important, because this allows more informed decisions to be made. And that's what really needs to happen, that's what should happen, that's what we're doing whatever we can to make happen. So I'm going to show you exactly what went into the process with the bus stop right outside Sunnyside Community Services. So what I'm going to do here is go into the map view, and I'm going to show you exactly what went into those two accessibility ratings. So here we are. Here's the bus stop right here, Queens Boulevard, 39th Place. We're going to click on this. Stop status, it is intact. The only reason why it shows this is because many different data sets were merged in the process of assembling the data set that we're working with. And because Q32 is no longer with New York City Transit, it is an MTA bus company route, it's showing up like that because it's no longer in the New York City Transit data set. It is now in the MTA bus company data set. But don't worry about that. Instead, what we're going to be looking at are all of the different factors that went into these two ratings. So as you can see here, this view specifically shows not only the two ratings, the essential origins and destinations, and the pathway conditions, but it also shows other notes that were previously taken. And I really want to give a special shout out to all of our volunteers who took the time to go out into the field and collect these data. Thank you so much. We're incredibly grateful. I'm incredibly grateful, and we're definitely going to keep going with this. But here's where all of this becomes relevant. So, as you can see, or as you, there are many different fields here, and each of these correspond to not only the 8 factors that you saw previously, but also sub-factors within those 8 factors. So for factor 1, which discusses specifically the presence of a bus shelter with seating, this stop has neither a bus shelter nor a bench. So that's going to rate it down when it comes to essential to the pathway conditions rating. Now for factor 2, the reason why you don't see anything is because there's no subsidized or supportive housing. So because of that, no fields were filled out for factor 2. So we're going to move on to factor 3, which talks about essential services and transit connections and the stop's proximity to each of them. So I'm actually going to switch views and actually go into the edit window so you can see each of the different factors here. So as you can see here, we discussed factor 1, and what a stop scan allows you to do is enter each of the potential options directly into the data set from this web application. And as you can see here, BSAI factor 2, BSAI of course stands for the Bus Stop Accessibility Index, and there are very specific criteria that need to be met in order to answer a particular way. Those are all discussed in the stop scan manual, and it basically specifies, like, if you answer a certain way for a certain question, this is what you do next. This is how you interpret the criteria, the thresholds that need to be met in order to answer a particular way. So let's go to factor 3, essential services and transit connections. So the stop in question is not only right outside of a Sunnyside Community Services, which is a senior center with congregate programs, but there's also a Dollar Tree right down the block, and that's a discount store, which is also an essential service. And there is a full list of essential services over here, and it's intended to be multiple choice based on whatever is appropriate for the stop. That's what gets selected in this site evaluation. And in this case, because the stop is within 250 to 300 feet, which is about one street block, it is about a third to a half of an avenue block, but that's the threshold here. And because we have both the senior center and the discount store, both of those have been selected. This selection is only relevant if we're talking about a transit connection or a transfer to other transit lines, like a subway station, a non-parallel bus route, a Long Island Railroad, Metro North, etc. Now, proximity to the stop, this is where we specified how close to the bus stop is this essential service. And for the sake of this evaluation, we're only focusing on the one that is more essential, and that is the Sunnyside Community Services. It is within 200 to 300 feet, and it's on the same side of the street. So we're going to answer it this way. And once we do that, we did not answer this, although we probably could have if the only origins or destinations were on the other side of the street. This just evaluates the pathway to get there, and that includes, of course, the crosswalk, whether it's marked, it has pedestrian signals, how busy the street is, etc. So once that's done, we move on to question 4 and 5, and both of these questions are just very simple. Is the sidewalk wide enough to be ADA compliant? Factor 4 focuses on the sidewalk at the stop, and Factor 5 focuses on the sidewalk surrounding the stop on the block. And in this case, both of them are more than 36 inches wide, and therefore those two options are selected for those two factors. Now we move on to Factor 6, which focuses on the condition of the sidewalk. Is the sidewalk at the stop, on the block surrounding the stop, and or the crosswalk necessary to access the stop even, level, and well maintained? And this is where we get into the specific conditions that could pose a potential barrier. And those include cracks in the sidewalk, uneven sidewalks, any sidewalk flags or sidewalk squares protruding out, and that specifically could pose a much greater risk for people with wheelchairs or walkers because of the difference in height, and for some, in some cases, it makes it impossible for a wheelchair to get through, as well as the sidewalk slanting beyond 2% the width of the sidewalk, which is the threshold specified by the ADA, as well as whether the terrain or the hill is steep, if there is a hill. In this case, there is a steep hill, but that's really related to the terrain of the land where the stop is, but nonetheless it's still important because it does have an impact on those with particularly health issues, those with respiratory issues, and others who may be more frail. It could potentially make it more difficult, especially if you're moving a bus stop and now someone has to climb a steep hill to get to the bus when they didn't have to previously. So that's why this is also included. And in this case, there is a hill, so that option, subfactor 6.5, was also included. So once that is done, then we move on to Factor 7, which specifically concerns riders' abilities to get on and off the bus, and the ability of the bus to approach the curb, board as close to the curb as possible, and when necessary, deploy the ramp onto the sidewalk for riders with mobility devices to get on or off without their path being obstructed, and for someone with a wheelchair or other mobility device to get on or off using that ramp and that path not being obstructed. So this one's fairly straightforward. It's either, in this case, yes, all of those are true, or no, at least one of those isn't true. In this case, the bus does have the ability to approach the curb, so that's why subfactor 7.1 was selected here. And then lastly, we move on to whether there are any location-based obstructions or safety hazards, and in this case, the answer is no. If there were any, those would be selected, and those would also be specified here. So that's what goes into the index. Now, once the data collection is done, these two ratings are automatically generated, and the weights were specifically developed in conversation with everyday bus riders, disability advocates. Special shout out to the folks at the Brooklyn Center for the Independence of the Disabled, as well as other leaders in transportation planning. A special shout out to Jody Holton, who used to be the chief planning officer at SEPTA, as well as a former Secretary of Transportation in Pennsylvania and General Manager of SEPTA, Leslie Richards, and all of these, as well as many others. If I give you a specific shout out, please know that I'm incredibly grateful for all of your help in really making this as accurate as possible to riders' lived experiences and needs, especially those who have greater needs. And all of the weights for each of these factors were devised based on those conversations, and that was all intended to result in a bus stop accessibility index that was as close to riders' needs and lived experiences and addressing those as humanly possible. So based on those, and this is all going to be explained in greater detail. There's, of course, math involved in both of these, and there is going to be a report coming out specifically about that. And but this is what the result is. So based on all of these different factors and the weights for each index that were specified in the calculations that were automatically generated through StopScan and the Bus Stop Accessibility Index, it resulted in two ratings: the Essential Origins and Destinations, or EOD, and Pathway Conditions, PCD. Both of these are incredibly vital in understanding how vital the stop is, and also how everyday bus riders, especially those with mobility conditions, are able to access the stop. So how do we interpret this? The Essential Origins and Destinations rating is 5. Both of these are on scales of 0 to 5, and a 5 out of 5 for Essential Origins and Destinations confirms that the stop is vital solely based on its proximity to Essential Origins and Destinations, namely Sunnyside Community Services, the Senior Center with congregate programs, and the Dollar Tree, and the combination of both of those, both of which people rely on. The stop is absolutely vital. And the Pathway Conditions accessibility rating is 4.1 out of 5, which also signals that the pathway conditions are also pretty good. And of course, the hill does end up working against this rating. Same thing with the lack of a bus shelter with seating. But all in all, that's a pretty strong rating for both Essential Origins and Destinations and Pathway Conditions. So there are two alternative scenarios that I do want to bring up when it comes to the future of the stop. I know that there is now a bike lane along Queens Boulevard, and that should not be an excuse to do anything with the stop. It is absolutely vital. Seniors and others who rely on the stop need the stop as is, and I'm going to explain how ultimately any changes to that would ultimately negatively impact both of these two ratings. So one possibility that's been put on the table is to move this bus stop over to 39th Street. Now let's look at the conditions over here. So this is where the bus stop is. This is where Sunnyside Community Services is. The bus stop is right here. Hardly a walk to get to this stop. I know there is a hill, and that was reflected in the index, but nonetheless, the bus stop is right there. No issues. Now, what's being proposed is, I know this is older imagery, but this is a BMW dealership. Now, first of all, that's not an essential service. This dealership, people are not relying on this. Maybe other than those who are working at the BMW dealership. But for the most part, it's not an essential service. And if you put the stop here, that would significantly lower both the essential origins and destinations rating because you're moving the stop farther away. Ultimately, what happens is because the stop is moved farther away, it negatively impacts the essential origins and destinations rating because the stop is farther away from that essential origin or destination. You now have to walk across the street. Fortunately, there are accessible pedestrian signals, but there's also no guarantee that cyclists and those on e-bikes are actually going to follow the traffic rules and yield or stop for pedestrians, especially now that there's a new rule for both motorists and cyclists that you now, if you're driving or riding a bike or an e-bike, you now have to wait until pedestrians have stepped onto the curb to continue moving. But how's that really going to be enforced? And especially for cyclists or e-bikes, are they really going to follow that? And how is that going to be enforced? So that still could potentially pose a risk, and it would also impact the pathway conditions for that same reason. You have to cross the street. Fortunately, the sidewalks are well maintained, but there is, of course, a hill here too, and that has also would negatively impact the ability for some to more easily make the trip up to the senior center, especially for those who are frailer, have health conditions. It could become a greater problem than it seems on the surface. So moving the bus stop over to this corner here where the BMW dealership is would negatively impact the essential origins and destinations rating and the pathway conditions rating. So that's a bad idea. Now, the second potential scenario is we have this bike lane, and what DOT would end up doing, of course, in conjunction with the MTA, is build out an island bus stop. So instead of boarding the bus from the curb here, you would have to cross the street. You would have to cross the bike lane and board on an island here, and this is where the bus ends up stopping to board passengers. Now, this may sound like a win-win on the surface, but what ends up happening is because there would likely be no signal or no traffic calming devices to slow down cyclists or e-bikes, and also because many, if not all, cyclists and e-bikes don't yield for pedestrians anyway, let alone stop at the red lights, this would also pose a safety risk for those having to cross the street, which is everyone who uses this bus stop, and therefore the pathway conditions rating would go down significantly. And this stop would become less safe for these vulnerable riders because the pathway to get from the sidewalk to the bus stop island or from the bus stop island to the sidewalk would become riskier and therefore less safe. So, and there were pleas at this rally by some who have actually been hit by bikes before. So what does that do for them? How does that reassure them that that's not gonna happen to them again? Especially at night, if they have trouble seeing at night too. Those are all other considerations that need to be taken into account by the DOT and by the MTA. But those are the two potential options, and none of them are actually going to serve residents. And therefore, because of the way that this bus stop is placed, the conditions of the sidewalk, its proximity to Sunnyside Community Services, and the fact that there's virtually no risk over here because there are no streets to cross. No one has to interact with any kind of traffic to get on the bus or off the bus here, because the bus can approach the curb easily. There should be no changes to this bus stop. This bus stop should be kept as is, full stop, because doing anything other than that would adversely affect more vulnerable riders than actually benefit cyclists. And the way that it's set up already provides a means for cyclists to move around the bus over here, or in effect wait for the bus to pull away from the curb. And cyclists have greater abilities to move around. It's a minor inconvenience compared to the disaster that moving the stop away would pose for those who don't have the same abilities of being able to move with greater agility, or move more easily or without pain. So that's why this stop should be kept as is. And we've not only heard pleas from residents in these neighborhoods and many others who use Sunnyside Community Services, but we also have quantitative evidence as well, based on a comprehensive framework that needs to be adopted citywide. Thank you for watching.
Thanks for watching. To stay up to date with Passengers United, please subscribe and follow us on social media. Learn more about us and support us at passengersunited.org.